Pervitin will not make anyone superhuman. It is not a magic pill that gives unlimited power and opportunities. It is just a stimulant of your body's power and nothing more. The pill does not give strength, it only mobilizes all the resources of the body. Long-term use of these pills leads to exhaustion and unfortunate consequences. After regular use of pills by soldiers, it will be impossible to fight. And here is how a German soldier at the beginning of the Second World War described the use of pervitin pills and the consequences. A huge column of trucks stretched along the roads leading to the southeast. Battalion after battalion passed village after village in marching order. The reconnaissance battalion of the division marched ahead at a considerable distance from the main force. After almost 10 days of rest, we marched by night and day, marching further and further south. We traveled around the clock. The soldiers in the trucks again had gray faces from the dust and inflamed eyes. Dust penetrated everywhere. The heat, the dust, the nervous tension of the night marches were a serious test for everyone. The drivers were required to do the impossible, to drive without lights in the darkness of the night, often off-road until dawn, and then in the heat of the day against the sun with eyes constantly tired, until the night march began. Orderlies handed out pervitin pills to squeeze the last of our strength out of us. After taking the notorious yellow pill, one usually felt awake at first, as if one had woken up after a long, deep sleep. The time between taking these pills was steadily shortening. The irritability of the drivers and soldiers reached such a point that they could explode at any moment. The defeated French divisions were withdrawing, abandoning their fighting equipment and armaments. On roadsides and town squares, in arable fields and meadows, the decay of what was once one of the most powerful continental armies was taking place. Huge brown columns of prisoners of war were moving toward us. We had long since crossed the Marne and Seine and were making our way toward Paris from the east. With short rest breaks for the drivers, during which the rest of the soldiers refueled the vehicles and refilled the radiator, replenished drinking water and food supplies, we drove south again. Our vanguards had already captured bridgeheads on the Loire, crossed it in many places, and were advancing on Lyon. The enemy was no longer able to gain a foothold as the British had previously skillfully done. Between the Loire and Saône our division rode farther south, driving forward day and night. The main burden was borne by the drivers in the glowing cabs, under the blinding sun, in the thick dust of country roads and night darkness. After each pill of pervitin we got driving fever, to drive further, but not to stop. We did not even pay attention to the attacks of French aviation, dropping flares that turned night into day, falling bombs and machine gun bursts. Every day the same picture was observed: French fighting vehicles abandoned on the roads and squares, burned tanks with charred corpses, cannons with dead calculations, witnesses of recent fights in vain for them. After one of the nights it finally happened, the effects of the energizing drugs had ceased. Older drivers began to fall asleep at the wheel. At dawn the order came to disperse and camouflage the vehicles and sleep. The rising sun ate away the coolness of the night, and it became so uncomfortable under the blanket that further sleep could not be thought of. Nerves remained tense and could not relax. Meanwhile someone had found a stream nearby. Immediately we rushed to it to wash off the mud that had accumulated since the stay at the Strait. We put on fresh underwear hidden in unmarked areas of the car. No one can describe the pleasant feeling that such a bath gives after days of incessant driving through heat, dirt, and dust. Only now we could talk about a refreshing rest. Only now we could sleep in the shade of trees after the usual breakfast. As we were falling asleep, someone brought us news of a truce. While the drivers slept, the rest of us refueled the cars, checked water and oil levels, tire pressure, washed windows, and took care of provisions. In the evening, after resting, we set out again on our night march. This was the last night trip without lights or the use of drugs in that campaign. The next morning we were northwest of Lyons. There was the first big stop there since these frantic races began. Our vehicles were positioned without much camouflage in one of the villages. Rumors that armistice talks had begun were confirmed. Reports came over the radio. France had requested peace. In Tarara, our reconnaissance battalion still had to fight. There, our last dead were committed to French soil. Cleaning weapons, repairing equipment and weapons, and tidying ourselves and our uniforms came to the fore. After washing with soap and water, we looked like human beings again, except for our sunburned and dusty faces. The next day we formed a semicircle in front of Regimental Commander Berlinger. He announced the end of the Western campaign. And so it was written in the diaries, July 20th, 1940, the largest continental power in Europe after 6 weeks of fighting laid down its arms.